Chapter 5, Meeting of Nanda and Vasudeva. Although Krishna was the real son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because of Kamsa's atrocious activities, Vasudeva could not enjoy the birth ceremony of his son. But Nanda Maharaj, the foster father, celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna very joyfully. The next day, it was declared that a male child had been born to Yashoda. According to Vedic custom, Nanda Maharaj called for learned astrologers and brahmanas to perform the birth ceremony. After the birth of a child, the astrologers calculate the moment of the birth and make a horoscope of the child's future life. Another ceremony takes place after the birth of the child. The family members take baths, cleanse themselves, and decorate themselves with ornaments and nice garments. Then they come before the child and the astrologer to hear of the future life of the child. Nanda Maharaj and other members of the family dressed and sat down in front of the birthplace. All the brahmanas who were assembled there on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to the rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. All the demigods are also worshipped on this occasion, as well as the forefathers of the family. Nanda Maharaj distributed to the brahmanas 200,000 cows, which were well decorated with cloth and ornaments. He gave the brahmanas not only cows in charity, but also hills of grain decorated with ornaments and golden bordered cloth. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in very honest and pious ways, because that is the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunction, therefore, one should purify such wealth by giving cows and gold in charity to the brahmanas. A newborn child is also purified by gifts of grain in charity to the brahmanas. In this material world, it is to be understood that we are always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourself. We can purify our duration of life by taking daily bath and cleansing the body inside and outside, and accepting the 10 kinds of purificatory processes. By austerities, by worship of the Lord, and by distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of wealth. We can purify ourselves by studying the Vedas in order to understand the absolute truth and achieve self realization. It is therefore stated in the Vedic literature that by birth everyone is born a Sudra, but that by accepting the purificatory process one becomes twice born, that by studying the Vedas one becomes a Vipra, which is the preliminary qualification for becoming a Brahmana, and that when one perfectly understands the absolute truth, he is called a Brahmana. And when the Brahmana reaches further perfection, he becomes a Vaishnava or a devotee. In Krishna's birth ceremony, all the assembled Brahmanas began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. There are different kinds of chanting, known as Sutta, Magadha, Vandija, and Virudhavali. Along with this chanting of mantras and songs, bugles and kettle drums are sounded outside the house. On this occasion, the joyous vibrations could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside of the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp, and scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nice colored cloths and gold necklaces. When all the ecstatic cowherd men heard that Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna, was celebrating the birth ceremony of his son, they became spontaneously joyful. They dressed themselves with very costly garments and ornamented their bodies with different kinds of earrings and necklaces, and wore great turbans on their heads. After dressing themselves in this gorgeous way, they took various kinds of presentations and thus approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. As soon as they heard that Mother Yashoda had given birth to a child, all the cowherd women became overwhelmed with joy, and they also dressed themselves with various kinds of costly garments and ornaments, and smeared scented cosmetics on their bodies. As the dust on the lotus flower exhibits the exquisite beauty of the flower, All the gopis, cowherd women, applied the dust of kunkuma on their lotus like faces. These beautiful gopis took their different presentations and very soon reached the house of Maharaj Nanda. Overburdened with their heavy hips and swollen breasts, the gopis could not proceed very quickly toward the house of Nanda Maharaj. But out of ecstatic love for Krishna, they proceeded as quickly as possible. Their ears were decorated with pearl rings, their necks with jeweled lockets, their lips and eyes with different kinds of lipstick and ointment, and their hands with nice golden bangles. As they were very hastily passing over the stone road, the flower garlands which were decorating their bodies fell to the ground, and it appeared that a shower of flowers was falling from the sky. From the movement of the different kinds of ornaments on their bodies, they were looking still more beautiful. In this way, they all reached the house of Nanda Yashoda and blessed the child. Dear child, you live long just to protect us. While they were blessing child Krishna in this way, they offered a mixture of turmeric powder, oil, yogurt, milk, and water. They sprinkled this mixture not only on the body of child Krishna, but on all other persons who were present there. Also, on that auspicious occasion, there were different bands of expert musicians playing. When the cowherd men saw the pastimes of the cowherd women, they became very joyful, and in response, they also began to throw yogurt, milk, clarified butter, and water upon the bodies of the gopis. Then both parties began to throw butter on each other's bodies. Nanda Maharaj was also very happy to see the pastimes of the cowherd men and women, and he became very liberal in giving charity to the different singers who were assembled there. Some singers were reciting great verses from the Upanishads and Puranas. Some were glorifying the family ancestors, and some were singing very sweet songs. There were also many learned brahmanas present, and Nanda Maharaj, being very satisfied on this occasion, gave them different kinds of garments, ornaments, and cows in charity. It is very important to note in this connection how wealthy the inhabitants of Vrindavan were simply by raising cows. All the cowherd men belonged to the Vaishya community, and their business was to protect the cows and cultivate crops. By their dress and ornaments, and by their behavior, it appears that although they were in a small village, they still were rich in material possessions. They possessed such an abundance of various kinds of milk products that they were throwing butter lavishly on each other's bodies without restriction. Their wealth was in milk, yogurt, clarified butter, and many other milk products. And by trading their agricultural products, they were rich in various kinds of jewelry, ornaments, and costly garments. Not only did they possess all these things, but they could give them away in charity lavishly, as did Nanda Maharaj. Thus, Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, began to satisfy the desires of all the men assembled there. He respectfully received them and gave them in charity whatever they desired. The learned Brahmanas, who had no other source of income, were completely dependent on the Vaishya community for their maintenance, and they received gifts on such festive occasions as birthdays and marriages. While Nanda Maharaj was worshipping Lord Vishnu on this occasion and was trying to satisfy all the people there, his only desire was that the newborn child Krishna would be happy. Nanda Maharaj had no knowledge that this child was the origin of Vishnu. He was praying to Lord Vishnu to protect him. Rohini Devi, the mother of Balaram, was the most fortunate wife of Vasudeva. She was away from her husband, yet just to congratulate Maharaj Nanda on the occasion of the birth ceremony of his son Krishna, she dressed herself very nicely. Wearing a garland, a necklace, and other bodily ornaments, she appeared on the scene and moved hither and thither. According to the Vedic system, a woman whose husband is not at home does not dress herself very nicely. But although Rohini's husband was away, she still dressed herself very nicely on this occasion. From the opulence of the birth ceremony of Krishna, it is very clear that at that time, Vrindavan was rich in every respect. Because Lord Krishna took birth in the house of King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, the goddess of fortune was obliged to manifest her opulences in Vrindavan. It appeared that Vrindavan had already become a site for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune. After the birth ceremony, Nanda Maharaj decided to go to Mathura to pay the annual tax to the government of Kamsa. Before leaving, he called for the able cowherd men of the village and asked them to take care of Vrindavan in his absence. When Nanda Maharaj arrived in Mathura, Vasudev got the news and was very eager to congratulate his friend. He immediately went to the place where Nanda Maharaj was staying. When Nanda saw Vasudev, he felt that he had regained his life. Nanda, overwhelmed with joy, immediately stood up and embraced Vasudev. Vasudev was received very warmly and offered a nice place to sit. Anxious about his two sons, who had been put under the protection of Nanda without Nanda's knowledge, Vasudev inquired about them with great anxiety. Both Balaram and Krishna were the sons of Vasudev. Balaram was transferred to the womb of Rohini, Vasudev's own wife, but Rohini was kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna was personally delivered to Yashoda and exchanged with her daughter. Nanda Maharaj knew that Balaram was the son of Vasudev, but he did not know that Krishna was also Vasudev's son. Vasudev, of course, was aware of this fact and inquired very eagerly about both Krishna and Balaram. Vasudev then addressed Nanda. My dear brother, you were old and very anxious to beget a son, and yet you had none. Now, by the grace of the Lord, you are fortunate to have a very nice son. I think that this incident is very auspicious for you. Dear friend, I was imprisoned by Kamsa, and now I am released. Therefore, this is another birth for me. I had no hope of seeing you again, but by God's grace, I can see you. In this way, Vasudev indirectly expressed his anxiety about Krishna. Krishna was sent incognito to the bed of Mother Yashoda, and after Nanda very pompously celebrated Krishna's birth ceremony, he went to Mathura. So Vasudev was very much pleased and said, This is a new birth for me. He never expected that Krishna would live because all his other sons had been killed by Kamsa. Vasudev continued, My dear friend, it is very difficult for us to live together. Although we have our family and relatives, sons and daughters, by nature's way we are generally separated from one another. The reason for this is that every living entity appears on this earth under different pressures of fruitive activities. Although they assemble together, there is no certainty of their remaining together for a long time. According to one's fruitive activities, one has to act differently and thereby be separated. For example, many plants and creepers are floating on the waves of the ocean. Sometimes they come together and sometimes they separate forever. One plant goes one way and another plant goes another. Similarly, our family assembly may be very nice while we are living together, but after some time, in the course of the waves of time, we are separated. The purport of this expression by Vasudev is this. Although he had 8 sons born in the womb of Devaki, unfortunately they were all gone. He could not even keep his one son Krishna with him. Vasudev was feeling his separation, but he could not express the real fact. Please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan, he said. You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting sufficient grass and water? Please also let me know whether the place where you are now living is undisturbed and peaceful. This inquiry was made by Vasudev because he was very anxious about Krishna's safety. He knew that Kamsa and his followers were trying to kill Krishna by sending various kinds of demons. They had already resolved that all children born within 10 days of the birthday of Krishna should be killed. Because Vasudev was so anxious about Krishna, he inquired about the safety of his residents. He also inquired about Balaram and his mother Rohini, who were entrusted to the care of Nanda Maharaj. Vasudev also reminded Nanda Maharaj that Balaram did not know his real father. He knows you as his father. And now you have another child, Krishna, and I think you are taking very nice care of both of them. It is also significant that Vasudeva inquired about the welfare of Nanda Maharaj's animals. The animals, and especially the cows, were protected exactly in the manner of one's children. Vasudeva was a Kshatriya and Nanda Maharaj was a Vaishya. It is the duty of the Kshatriyas to give protection to the citizens, and it is the duty of the Vaishyas to give protection to the cows. The cows are as important as the citizens. Just as the human citizens should be given all kinds of protection, so the cows also should be given full protection. Vasudev continued to say that the maintenance of religious principles, economic development, and the satisfactory execution of meeting the demands of the senses depend on cooperation among relatives, nations, and all humanity. Therefore, it is everyone's duty to see that his fellow citizens and the cows are not put into difficulty. one should see to the peace and comfort of his fellow man and the animals. The development of religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification can then be achieved without difficulty. Vasudeva expressed his sorrow due to not being able to give protection to his own sons born of Devaki. He was thinking that religious principles, economic development, and the satisfaction of his senses were therefore all lost. Upon hearing this, Nanda Maharaj replied, "My dear Vasudev, I know that you are very much aggrieved because the cruel King Kamsa has killed all your sons born of Devaki. Although the last child was a daughter, Kamsa could not kill her, and she has entered into the celestial planets. My dear friend, do not be aggrieved. We are all being controlled by our past unseen activities. Everyone is subjected to his past deeds, and one who is conversant with the philosophy of karma and its reactions is a man in knowledge. Such a person will not be aggrieved at any incident, happy or miserable." Vasudev then replied, "My dear Nanda, if you have already paid the government taxes, then return soon to your place, because I think that there may be some disturbances in Gokula." After the friendly conversation between Nanda Maharaj and Vasudev, Vasudev returned to his home. Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men who had come to Mathura to pay their taxes also returned home. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 5th chapter of Krishna, the meeting of Nanda and Vasudev.
Om Gana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadhati Shapadantikam Pandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrashatam Shahagana Raghunatan Vitam Stam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lolita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Panchako Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we find that the Nanda Maharaj celebrates the birth ceremony of Krishna. This is called Nandotsav, and it's also the day of Srila Prabhupada's appearance, Nandotsav. And it's quite the festival. The everyone, the astrologers are called in to calculate the birth moment of the child and tell the future of the child. The Brahmins are called to chant auspicious mantras, and everybody dresses to the nines, as they say. They all dress opulently and festively, and so there's a big to-do. And an important function is for the family to give charity. As Prabhupada explains, everyone in the world is impure by association with material nature. And by our livelihood also we become impure. We make money by questionable means. And so our life needs to be purified, our wealth needs to be purified. Everything needs to be purified. And therefore, charity is very important. Yagyadana tapas chaiva pavanani manishina. Sacrifice, charity, and austerity are purifying even for learned people. So, particularly on the birth of a child, the father would give charity to the best of his capacity. And Nanda Maharaj had great capacity. It's described here the whole village was wealthy, and he was the head person. He had so many cows, he had so much. And Prabhupada explains that by these agricultural enterprises, by protecting cows especially, one gets real wealth. Elsewhere, Prabhupada has talked about this, the so-called wealth that we have in the form of machines and plastic and so many things is a kind of false wealth, and money in the bank, papers or digital credits. It can all fall apart at any moment. The real wealth is land and cows, and the real necessities are milk products, vegetables, grains, fruits. So Vrindavan was rich in all of these things. So to purify the whole situation, the charity was lavishly distributed. And you can see a joyous occasion with everything's decorated. The village process is that there's all natural products decorating the village, and they decorate everything with mango leaves and different kinds of rangoli, paintings made with on the ground with rice flour and colored dyes, and so many things are there. Scented water sprinkled everywhere, and the flags and festoons, and then there's turmeric and oil, which are smeared on the cows. Usually it's like that. You see the handprints with on the cows. So that's auspicious. And the cows wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with gold necklaces and nice cloths. So the cows were really done up, and everybody's in a joyful mood. Everybody's dressed gorgeously, and they're, yeah. And they were, they prayed to the Lord, may you live a long time and protect us. And they blessed the child again with the yogurt and oil and turmeric and all of that. And there were musicians playing. And then they started tossing all these things around. You know, we're in a village, we have all these milk products. So what are we going to do with them? Well, we'll throw them. When there's a festival, we'll throw milk and yogurt and what have you, and everybody's throwing this stuff around. In the West, in the winter, we have snowball fights, a kind of enjoyment. But this is a lot more fun, throwing yogurt and butter and all of this. That means they were really wealthy. I mean, nobody's calculating, how much does this butter cost, and better ration it out, because now they're just tossing it. and charity is being given in every direction, garments and ornaments and so on. So in this way, Nanda Maharaj, satisfied everyone, gave whatever charity they wanted. The Brahmins are not salaried, but on these kinds of occasions, when there's a birth ceremony, a marriage ceremony, then charity is given, and it's especially given to the Brahmins. So in this way, it all works out. The Vaishyas get their money or their wealth by protecting cows and cultivating the land. The Kshatriyas get their wealth by reasonable tax, and the Brahmins get their wealth by charity. So in this way, the wealth is distributed. And the Shudras get what they get, old garments, and they also are taken care of nicely. I can cite an example from contemporary Vedic culture. When Bhaktivedanta Hospital was opened in Bombay, then they had a little opening ceremony. They put up a little tent, and there was some talks and so on, and mostly for the benefit of the donors. Krishna Chandra Prabhu was connected with many wealthy men in Bombay, and some of those friends and associates contributed for the hospital, so they were recognized and thanked, and the usual sort of things. And then there was very opulent prasadam distributed to all of the people who attended. And in Bombay, they do it very nicely with silver serving things and very nice prasadam. And one of the men asked Krishna Chandra, could I have some prasadam for my driver? Because here in India, no one of stature drives. They all have a professional driver who handles that. So could I have some prasadam for my driver? So Krishna Chandra said, drivers have all been fed. While the talks were going on, all the drivers were fed. And the same prasadam that everyone else got, they were fed. So that's, driver means Shudra, but the Shudras are also not neglected. What do they want? Nice food, and reasonable accommodations, and necessities of life. So all the drivers were fed on this auspicious occasion of opening of the hospital. So here also, for the birth of a child, everyone becomes happy. The Brahmins get charity, the local people have a good time throwing butter all around. The Shudras are given charity also. So everyone becomes satisfied. And Nanda Maharaj did all this for the protection of the child. He was worshiping Lord Vishnu so that Lord Vishnu would protect him. And of course, he didn't know that the child was the origin of Lord Vishnu. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Try. Because Krishna was appearing in Vrindavan, Vrindavan had already become the place of pastimes for the goddess of fortune. So there was no shortage of wealth. And Rohini Devi also took part in this celebration and dressed herself very nicely. And Prabhupada comments that a woman whose husband is out of home, according to Vedic culture, doesn't dress nicely, because the women don't dress nicely for the public, they dress nicely for their husbands. So the husband is out of home, then the woman doesn't dress very nicely. But Rohini made an exception because Krishna had appeared, so she also dressed herself very nicely and took part in the celebration. So then, after the birth ceremony, Nanda Maharaj decided to go to Mathura to pay the annual taxes to Kamsa's government. Whoever's in charge, you have to pay your taxes. So he arranged for some capable cowherd men to safeguard Vrindavan, look after Vrindavan in his absence. And then he went to Mathura. And there Vasudev got word that Nanda Maharaj was there, and they had a very affectionate meeting. And Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev was inquiring from Nanda Maharaj about, there's sort of the usual inquiries. If you asking a Brahmin how he's doing, is your mind peaceful? Is your bhajan going on nicely? If it's a Kshatriya, are your citizens happy? Is everything peaceful in the kingdom? If it's a Vaishya, how's your business going? And are your animals happy? Prabhupada was talking about, he said, you wouldn't ask me, how is your business going? And sannyasi, you don't have your business, but a Vaishya, you ask, how's your business going? So in this way, Vasudev was asking, are the animals all safe? Is everything peaceful in Vrindavan? And indirectly, he's asking, is Kamsa creating mischief, and is Krishna safe? That was his real concern. Is Balaram safe? Is Krishna safe? That was the purpose of his inquiry mentioned. With anxiety, he was asking about these things. So Balaram was known to be the son of Vasudeva because Rohini was there in Vrindavan. But Nanda didn't know that Krishna was also the son of Vasudeva. But in any case, Vasudeva was inquiring about the welfare of Krishna and Balaram. Then Vasudeva expressed some philosophical reflections. It's very difficult for even a family to live together. And this example is given in several places in Srimad Bhagavatam, that we're like flotsam and jetsam, like the plants that you see floating in the water, and they float together for some time, and then they float apart. So similarly, we come together as family members, husband and wife and children and so on, and we're together for a while. But by nature's arrangement, we all separate. These days, the separation is quite, what should we say? Violent often, or shock, not violent, that's the wrong word, but not enthusiastic. Rough, yeah. The rough separation. There's divorces. Half the marriages end in divorce, and then children move away, at an early age. In the Vedic system, the mother would live with the son, the children would, there's a joint family system. People would live together. But in the modern age, everybody's moving out quick. The children, as soon as they're a little grown, they want to be independent. No one wants to take responsibility for the old parents, and even the husband and wife um, divorce before the children are grown. So there must be a lot of waves on that ocean, because the plants that come together or separate quickly. In any case, Vasudeva says that we come together by our past karma, and we stay for some time, and then according to our karma, we have different destinies, and therefore we're separated. And of course, that happened with Vasudeva and Devaki. All their children were taken from them and killed. Only this one daughter was spared, and she also entered that celestial planet. She didn't stay at home either. So so the Kshatriyas have the duty to protect the citizens, the Vaishyas, the cows. So Vasudeva was inquiring about those things. One should see to the peace and comfort of his fellow man and the animals. Then the development of religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification can be achieved without difficulty. So, yes. These are the ordinary business of human life, dharma, artha, kama, and maybe moksha. But and when these things are neglected, then society becomes chaotic and people become unhappy. And when they're followed, then the society is reasonable. So Vasudeva felt sorrowful because he wasn't able to protect his children, his wife, although he was a Kshatriya. But the Nanda consoled him that, well, we're all under the pressure or force of our unseen previous deeds. So one has to be equipoised and not aggrieved by unhappiness or carried away by happiness that comes from karma. Then finally, Vasudeva said, if you've already paid the tax, then I would advise you to go back to Vrindavan at the earliest, because there may be some disturbances in Gokul. And later, Vasudeva, Nanda Maharaj will remember that Vasudeva said this, and he'll think that Vasudeva is like a mystic or something, because what he predicted had come true. So then Vasudeva returned home, and Nanda and the cowherd men who had come to Mathura to pay their taxes also returned to Gokula. Any comments or questions? Yes. Yes.
So I've heard Srila Prabhupada say that when Krishna was in Vrindavan, at least one demon would come every day.
Mm.
And Krishna was in Vrindavan for 14 or 15 years
Mm.
until Akrura came and brought he and Balaram to Mathura. So at some point, after 4,000, 5,000 demons all got killed by Krishna and Balaram, you'd think that, somebody would get a clue as to what's really going on. And then, of course, Akrura comes and brings Krishna and Balaram back to his real parents. So at some point, there must have been some revelation that, Krishna is also Vasudev's son, and that these are not ordinary boys. Let's bring them to Mathura. Is there any description in any of the other Puranas or anything as to when the aha moment appeared for all the residents of
Well,
Vrindavan and Mathura?
Well, of course, for Vasudeva, he's informed by Gargamuni. And it appears to me that this boy is, looking at the chart, he looks to me like he's the son of Vasudeva. Mm-hmm. So by Gargamuni, he's informed all about Krishna, his previous lives, and his birth as the son of Vasudeva, and also his future activities. All of these are intimated to Nanda Maharaj by Vasudeva, by Gargamuni. As far as Kamsa, doesn't Narada come and tell him what's up? Am I right? Refresh me on my Krishna book.
Well, that was another thing, is that the edict from Kamsa is kill all the kids that were born around this time.
Yes.
But then there's so many cowherd boys who are friends with Krishna who would have been born in that time frame, and yet
they didn't get killed.
Well, Krishna cut them off at the pass, I guess. Cut off the demons before they were able to get the other boys.
Yeah, it seems that they weren't able to create misfortune in Vrindavan. That's the nature of Vrindavan.
So it's funny that it took 14 or 15 years for Kamsa to figure out that, okay, here's what's going on here.
I think we can conclude that Kamsa was clueless.
That sounds likely.
And this is the nature of the demons. Avritam jnanam etena. Their knowledge is covered by their own material desires. That's enough. And they don't get it. Even we find that Akrura goes to Dhritarashtra also and lays out the whole thing. You're backing Duryodhana, who's Krishna's enemy, and you're going to lose everything. You're acting unjustly toward the Pandavas. You're favoring your own son, who's a mischievous rascal. And so you're just bringing misfortune on your head. You're going to lose it. And Duryodhana said, yes, I know, but what can I do? He's my son, and your instructions don't stand in my heart. The good instructions given to a fool, they don't stand. What to speak of figuring it out, even if they're told. The demons know. Even not demons, but even even a devotee can be bewildered. We had a friend who comes from a Brahmin family. His family's traditionally pujaris at a major temple. And he started a little juice business in New York City. He was actually working as a computer programmer, working in IT. But he had some extra money. He started a juice business. But he had no business acumen, and he was losing money, considerable money. And everybody told him, Prabhu, you're just losing money, and your prospects for making this a viable business don't exist. You're just going to lose more money. And he couldn't. No, what is that called? There's a word, a phrase.
Cognitive dissonance.
Excuse me?
Cognitive dissonance.
No, not cognitive dissonance. Sunk investment fallacy. I think is that what it's called? Sunk investment fallacy, because you've invested so much, you don't want to, you think you have to keep investing. I've already put in this much, so still there's a chance that I could recoup it, I could turn it around. People are so reluctant to just cut their losses and say, whoa, I've got a tiger by the tail, let me drop it. No, let me keep going. So he kept going till finally one day, he got it. And the business is officially closed and he's a happier man. But so we see it even amongst devotees, that this, I think, sunk investment, sunken cost fallacy. Thank you. Sunken cost fallacy. Just sort of takes us by the arms and says, no. Same thing happened to Jarasandha. You think after 2 or 3 times of losing all his forces, he would figure out that he was not going to win. Still, no, and surrounded by his advisors, no, it was just a mistake, fluke of fate. You're the better man. And they go on like that, and we see people, they get married, it's totally miserable. They lose, they lose money, they lose peace of mind, they lose everything, and they get married again. And then when that marriage doesn't work out, they do it a 3rd time and a 4th. It's like, what are you doing? Marriage, it doesn't look like you have good marriage karma, Prabhu. But still, they'll do it again. There has to be a better metaphor than chewing the chewed, because this is not just chewing the chewed, but it's more like chewing thorns. So these things go on. So Kamsa, sure, he should have seen that, and he had so many opportunities to see, and he could have even surrendered. If he would have surrendered, Krishna would have forgiven him. You're a surrendered soul. It's my promise to give shelter to anyone who surrenders to me. No way. Because of, in his case especially, because he's sinful. And because he's sinful, his knowledge is covered, and he can't see straight.
It's interesting that the greatest devotee who was giving advice to Kamsa didn't tell him to surrender. He told him, yeah, keep going, Narada Muni just kept encouraging him to be more and more of a demon. He's like, why are you being merciful to Vasudeva and Devaki? Just kill all the kids. That was Narada Muni that said that.
Yeah. Narada has a reputation for these things. He's found in many occasions to instigate. Yeah. Yeah, Narada disclosed to Kamsa the secret of Krishna. After which incident? Killing Aristasura, it seems. Then he visited Kamsa and told him. Of course, Kamsa saw Narada, but unless one sees the Lord or his devotees with purified eyes, one cannot derive the actual benefit. Narada Muni's mission was to finish things quickly. Krishna appeared in order to kill the demons, and Kamsa chief among them. So Narada wanted to expedite things. So he approached Kamsa with the real information. You're to be killed by the eighth son of Vasudeva. That eighth son is Krishna. You were misled by Vasudeva into believing that the eighth was a daughter, but she was born to Yashoda. Vasudeva did the switch. So Narada informed Kamsa of everything. Just to churn the pastimes or accelerate, expedite, Prabhupada says, Krishna's pastimes. Thank you. Something else? While I'm thinking of it, this business in the villages, we were on Padayatra. We stayed in pretty much every night in a different village. And we saw how opulent some of these villages were. I remember we stayed in, they had so many things. They'd have sugar cane, if that was their business, or they would have, in Gujarat especially, all sorts of milk products. They would have this, they would have that. I remember we stayed in one village, and they made such a feast for everyone, for the whole village. And they know how to do it. We talk about these festivals. They know how to do it. They had big pots. They were cooking rice, and they dug a big pit and lined the pit with clean white cloth. And then each batch of rice you put into the pit, and you're covering the pit with cloth. And as the rice is coming on, you're covering the whole batch, keeping it covered. So that in the evening, when the feast is going to be, you've got serious rice to distribute, and similarly vegetables, so many things. And they knew that they had a big area that they cleaned out. And then they had, although it was a big area, they had lots of people. So a batch of people would come, they would sit, they would take prasad, and they would all chant Hari Bol and get up, and some people would come and clean, then the next batch, then the next batch, then the next batch, the next batch. And this is not, done by a big corporation. This is the village, arranging all of this big feast for all the people. So villages are so nice in so many ways, and generous. We saw that the villagers would be, when Padayatra would come, they would be so generous. And the stingy people would be the city people. We would go to a village, if there were 4,000 people in the village, and 7,000 people would come to our program. Because people would come from. And then we'd go to a city, and if there were 80,000 people in the city, then 100 people would come to our program. Yeah, there was a question. Tulsi.
It's connected with what you were speaking just now, Maharaj. Just one idea further. In ISKCON, we are trying to take care for cows, but somehow it doesn't look like we figure out exactly how to do it in a profitable way.
Yeah, that's there. Partly, we're doing farms in the West, but it doesn't look like we know how to do them profitably or even sustainably. So that's true. Partly that's from inexperience. We have people who haven't grown up as farmers trying to figure out how to do agricultural enterprises. Partly it's due to the exorbitant price of land. Land is hugely expensive in places like America. And so just to get land, you have to spend so much. That's part of it also. And then we don't have devotees who know how to manage the cows and the production. And it's hard to find people who want to. People would rather live in the city and suffer than live in rural, what's the word, monotony. Nothing happens. There's no Saturday night action or something. So peaceful and dull. Or in different ways, they're reluctant to move onto the land. Or we sometimes lack expert management. So we have the property, we have potentially the facility, but we don't know how to manage it in such a way as to provide arrangements so that people can come and participate. There are all sorts of challenges involved. And partly also it's a vision. What is our vision for the community? What do we mean, Varnashram? What's our vision here? My understanding of what Prabhupada wanted comes from Padayatra. By going and seeing all these villages, my conclusion is that Prabhupada wanted villages, as you find them in India. The nice villages, because there's different kinds of villages. Some of them are sort of mismanaged also. Not that every village is heaven, but so many are very nice. They're all nicer than the cities. And some of them are extraordinarily nice in the sense of they're prosperous, they're amiable, people are pious, the animals are nicely taken care of. All these things are there. So part of it is that in order to do this, you need to see it in action. It's hard to create something that you haven't seen. You don't know how it works. But if you spend some time in Indian villages, you get to see how everything works. And not just the working part of working, but how people get on with one another, how they cooperate, what are the different functions that they perform. In an Indian village, you'll see it. There's a school teacher, there's a police chief, there's someone who has a place for grinding grains. Even I saw a fifth canto oil pressing machine in an Indian village. The model of the universe is given in the form of an oil pressing machine. And one of the big problems you have when you're either editing that section or trying to read it and understand it is, we've never seen an oil pressing machine. Or the problem I had, my first problem when editing the description of the movements of the stars and the constellations, I've never seen it, Grow up in a house in America, you don't know what the phases of the moon are or what the stars do. You don't look. You're busy with school and movies and whatever it is, talking to your friends on the telephone, and you don't. Back when anyway, on the landline. With a cord attached to it. Yeah, and a dial. But when you see how these villages work, without electricity. When I was traveling, most of them weren't really electrified. And how do people live? And how we can live like that also. So these are some thoughts, but it's easy to sit here and talk about it, but it is a challenge. I haven't talked about it, but I've written an article about it that was published in BTG regarding giving charity to ISKCON agricultural projects. Anyone read that article? No. Okay, I'll give you the synopsis of it. We have this sort of vegan challenge. Back in the old days, we were, on the top of the moral heap because we were vegetarians. But now, that you're a vegetarian, that's like, yeah, but you're not vegan. So you're kind of all implicated in animal slaughter and industrial exploitation and so on. And we're kind of saying, well, yeah. And one answer is that we become vegan, and some of our devotees and leaders do that. They become vegan, and then, okay, we're on equal terms. That's one option. Just give up milk products, and then you're clean. But there's another option, which I called ahimsa balancing. It's something like you have, what do they call that? Energy credits? Carbon offsets, that's what they call them, carbon offsets, thank you. You're taking a flight and you can contribute to some fund where the environmental costs of taking that flight is offset by your contribution. It's because you know that you have to go from New York to Chicago, but you know that when you take that plane, you're harming the environment. And so you compensate for that to some extent by contributing something for an environmental fund. So my proposal on ahimsa balancing is that you take the cost of your milk products that you consume, because it's very hard for us to get milk out of our program. We bathe our deities in milk. They want sandesh and rasgullas and hot milk at night. Our whole Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, was totally pro-milk. And our Vedic culture is all, you could say milk-based economy even. So it's very hard to just pull out milk and then, no, I refuse the Mahaprasadam because it didn't come from milk that was ahimsa milk. So it's hard to pull, just to strip Krishna consciousness of milk for the sake of parity with vegans. But you can contribute. Suppose you spend X amount, let's say $300 a year on your milk and your butter and your ghee and your yogurt and so on. So then you can give $300 to an ISKCON farm. Or according to your, if you can't, you've got a family and you multiply the 300 times a few and you say, well, I can't give them. All right, some percentage, whatever you can. Or more than you spend. You spend 300, you give 500. But you give to the ISKCON farms. That way, you're, what shall we say, offsetting the damage that you know that you're doing. And at the same time, you're doing something positive by contributing to sustainable protection of cows and sustainable agriculture. When you look at it, the vegans and people have different reasons for being vegans, of course. There's some are it's health, some it's something else. But when you look at it as a moral proposition, we don't want to give these, and there are different kinds of moral propositions among different vegans also. But if we don't want to give these corporate rogues any of our money because they're acting violently and harmfully and cruelly and so on. So they're not getting any money from us. Okay, but look at how much you're depriving them of. It's not much. Because if there's, let's say, for every dollar spent on a milk product, so much goes to packaging, so much goes to the grocery store, the grocer, so much goes for packaging, so much goes for transport, so much goes for taxes, so much goes for warehousing and all of that kind of stuff, so much goes for equipment, so much goes for finance. I was talking to one of my business friends, Marwadi business friend, and he told me the biggest component of anything you buy is what? If you're buying something for $100, what's the biggest chunk of that expenditure? He said it's interest. It's bank interest. First of all, you may pay interest on it. You buy it on time and you pay interest. But then the company that you're buying it from, you're renting equipment, they're buying this, they're buying that, they're leasing this, and at every stage, there's interest. So a huge component of anything you buy is interest. So, we're in the business of depriving Danone or Nestle or any of these mega demonic corporations of our money. They're not getting that much of our money to begin with. It's all being distributed in different ways. And then, okay, so we're depriving them of something, whatever it is, 50 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar. So you put all those dollars together, all the vegans in the world multiplied times 10 are not going to make a dent in the fortunes of these companies. You're looking at enormous enterprises. And even if we were to persuade huge numbers of people to become vegans, 5 times, 10 times what we've got now, wouldn't do much. They wouldn't, they'd just adjust. They'd just adjust and carry on. It would still be a profit center for them, and as long as it's a profit center, they continue. And meanwhile, you're not doing anything positive. You're keeping the money in your pocket and you're using it for your own sense gratification. Or you're using it to buy something else instead of milk, whether it's almond milk or this soy milk or this or that, which also has some sort of sinful activities associated. They exploit their workers, whatever it is. But this way you're making a positive contribution toward protecting cows, toward a natural way of life, and so on and so on and so on. So individuals, families, temples, they can all do this. And then you get, if you work on it, you get serious income for your farm communities. And you're making a positive contribution rather than just imagining that you're fighting against cruelty and that you're going to make an impact. That's the sum of it. You can look it up in the database or wherever the article is there from an old BG or my website, I think. BGG's website. Yes.
I'm fortunate to live in North Carolina, U.S., and we have so many farms all around. So what we've done is we created a personal relationship with one farm where we know that the farmer doesn't separate the calf from the cow, always keeps them together until the calf is like at least 6 months old. And then if it's a female calf, of course, grows up to be a milker. Bull calf is never sold to the slaughterhouse. So it's an ahimsa farm that's managed and run by a karmi, or what we think of as a karmi, I think of as yet to be a devotee. Um, and it's great. It's a personal relationship. And we always go, he doesn't deliver the milk and we don't buy it from a store. We actually go to the farm, visit the cows, brush them. He has a whole group of retired cows that are there, put out to pasture, as they say, but, never killed, never mistreated. They get veterinary care. All of that is going on. And so because we have a personal relationship, we can keep our eyes to make sure that he's
doing what he says.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So,
And imagine if it were an ISKCON farm and Vaishnavas and so on. But it's wonderful that you're able to do that.
one day it will be.
Yeah, one day it will be. It's wonderful.
And this particular farmer, he's a fourth or fifth or maybe longer generation farmer. So he knew what to do basically from birth.
We should study him and see how he's maintaining.
We are in our community. We're doing that. In fact, we have a farm called Flute Song Farm, which is a devotee. Flute Song Farm, which is an affiliated farm. And they have gear cows. And they're producing milk, but not enough to produce for the temple, nor to sell. But they're making money by having people come and cuddle cows. So people pay by the hour just to come and lay down with a docile cow or calf and get like therapy.
Wonderful.
So there's many different avenues
Yeah.
That we can make these things sustainable.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm struck also by that phrase, put out to pasture. It's an obsolete expression in English because cows aren't put out to pasture anymore. It points to a more pious time when a cow would actually be put out to pasture when it was old, rather than sent to a slaughterhouse.
Unfortunately, in the last 70 or 80 years, that term has actually meant to kill them.
Yeah, it's a euphemism now.
It's a euphemism.
Put out to pasture means, and the time will come when that's a euphemism for what you do in human society too.
Yeah.
We'll put our seniors out to pasture, and who knows what that will mean. This is Kali Yuga. These things are not just fanciful imaginations. The things that we couldn't imagine 20 or 30 or 50 years ago are now normative in human society, in modern Western society. So what will be in the future? Hang on to your hats. It's going to be mean, increasingly mean and vicious, especially because they're killing cows. When you're killing cows, Prabhupada said killing cows means killing yourself, killing your compassion, killing your human qualities. They're killing their mothers. So when they're doing that, what won't they do? They develop a viciousness that is reflected in what they do to one another. And they're all implicated, those, Prabhupada explains, those who raise the cow for slaughter, those who slaughter the cow, those who transport the cow, those who cook, those who serve, those who eat. They're all members of a conspiracy.
Even those who just condone.
Yes. Switch on.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, just in continuation, is like Krishna is a protector of cows. Then why are so many millions of cows being
Krishna doesn't automatically protect all the cows of the material world, particularly because we were discussing on the parikrama today, there's the vicious people who do nasty things, and then there's the people whose karma it is to be the victims of these nasty things. Krishna is protecting the cows in the spiritual world. In the material world, they're under the stringent laws of nature, whether you're a cow or a human being or an anything.
or a pure devotee? Or a Nitya Siddha who's come even.
No, Nitya Siddhas are not under the laws of nature. But the material, the everybody else is.
So the cows of Braj Bhumi also, are they being, because,
Braj Bhumi these days, it's Braj Bhumi deep underneath, but what goes on the surface of Braj Bhumi may not
leave
be so
cows
nice.
when they don't get milk.
So that's
and
the
small
that's
calves,
described.
baby boys, they just leave like that and they throw them off.
Yeah, because there's a covering of Maya over the surface of Braj Bhumi. And that's where these things go on.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, and also Surabhi Kunja for wonderful reading, and everyone who also shared. So my question also in continuation of the topic of care.
A little loud, please.
Yeah, sorry. So my question also have a connection with what you mentioned earlier and the topic of care, and also what you mentioned about the Monday dealings between the family members. So we spoke about how we can take care of the mother cow. Could you please share some of Prabhupada's instructions on how we can take care of our senior family members as a devotees, of course, like as a human beings?
I didn't see a lot of instructions from Srila Prabhupada about taking care of senior family members. There is an instruction by Krishna in 10th canto that anyone who can take care, has the ability to take care of dependent seniors, among others, but fails to do so, is a dead body, although breathing. So, Krishna speaks at some length. He's talking to Vasudeva and Devaki about the debt that a child has to the parents, particularly, which in India is still felt and elsewhere may or may not be. But there's another letter where Prabhupada says that we should be sympathetic to the devotees who fall sick. I think that was the context. When our devotees fall sick, we should be sympathetic. We should take. So in general, that's the instruction, that we should be sympathetic to devotees and their needs. Every community, Hare Krishna or Christian or Jewish or you name it, they have some arrangement for taking care of the sick, the orphaned, the widowed, the aged, these things, the poor. These things are there in every community. There's some system, and it differs from place to place, but there's some way that those who are in a position to do so help those who are needy. It's my personal strong prejudice that I hate programs for feeding the poor and making philanthropic arrangements for the public, because we're good people and we have we feel a social obligation and we're compassionate and all. So we spread money around to food and this and that for the general public, Meanwhile, we have no arrangement for the Vaishnavas. This is totally contrary to Shastra. In Shastra, charity in the mode of goodness is given to the Brahmins, Desha Kala Patra, it's given to a suitable person, and suitable people means especially, Prabhupada says again and again, the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. That's who it's for. First, the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. So we're so rich that we can distribute charity to get our pictures taken and get good publicity by going to the poor areas and distributing charity. And meanwhile, we don't really have an arrangement in place for our own members. So my suggestion is that our priorities are grossly misplaced, and that it's just almost unconscionable that sort of the official direction of ISKCON is to make these our flagship programs while not providing for the Vaishnavas. And it's just to look good and get money and what have you. And all right, there may be some, I don't want to just, but who's more important? The poor, the kids who can't stay in school because they don't have a meal? What nonsense, we don't want them in school. We think their schools are rubbish. The schools that they go to teach them how to be materialistic fools. We don't give any value to that school. Why do we think it's our duty to make sure that they have a decent meal so they can stay in a school which teaches them how to be more ignorant? It's not our real teaching, but just to be saints or something, to cut the profile of real sadhus. We're busy, feeding the poor. So I've sort of railed on about that, and whenever I get an opportunity. But the other side of it is we should be putting our priorities on taking care of the devotees. When this Ukraine war came up, first thing I saw was food for life, food for life, food for life. We're going out to these places and we're helping the people who are lined up at the immigration places, at the borders, and we're providing them food. Everybody was providing them food. The Red Cross and the Catholic Church and everybody under the sun was providing them food. Why was it our mission to provide them food? And only after some time did it come out that we need to take care of the Ukrainian devotees. We need to take care of they're the Vaishnavas. And they're facing great difficulties. I don't know if you've seen, there was a video by Niranjan Maharaj where he's explaining that the winter coming on and electricity being cut off in various places. The devotees are lacking heat, they're lacking water, they're lacking basic necessities. And devotees can help. Devotees from the West, or devotees who have money. So I sent them some money. I said, but not a dime for feeding the poor, please. This is all for the devotees. We were in an airport one time and Srila Prabhupada was leaving and someone gave him some prasadam, some sweets or something. And Prabhupada took a little, he said, distribute. And the devotees looked around and said to the people, in the airport, Prabhupada said, no, to the devotees. Prabhupada said, charity begins at home. You had a last comment. Okay. All right. It's our time to stop. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hmm? No, the stop means stop talking. We must have kirtan. What? No kirtan? Do kirtan. And we have a Kadasi prasadam for all the devotees who've come, I think. So take some prasadam also before you leave. You know our rules, by the way. Only Hare Krishna, only one tune, whatever tune it is, stick with it. And that's it.
So sometimes I'm a bit confused when, for instance, Devarishi, he sings a tune, but he sings 2 tunes.
I know. He went over his quota.
So maybe we stick just with Prabhupada today.
Hmm?
We can stick just with Prabhupada.
A 2-part, higher and lower, that's all right. That's two parts of the same tune. But not when you switch off to, then it counts as a second tune. And it's
Okay.
and what happens
correct.
elsewhere, that's different. But in my classes, one tune.
I'm not sure if I know the difference, but I try.
Okay. I see, you're leading. Okay, good.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai. Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamana Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. There are two more things that come to mind. One is, I believe, if you'd like to help the Ukrainian devotees, I think the URL for their website is shareyour.care. No com, just .care. Share your care. If you'd like to contribute, then you can read how to do it and what it's for. Is today your last day, Tulsi? Tomorrow. Okay, you have to lead kirtan tomorrow, Tulsi. That was the second thing. All right, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.